accidentally pressed the power button on that. Last word was for this height here. Right before I was trying to switch hands. This height right there is about yay high. About this tall, and you can see that there. Um, so things that can grow that tall are, as you can tell, eucalyptus does grow that high, but it has its problems. Fan palm grows that high, but what the fuck is that going to cover? Ficus tree barely grows that high. They've cut theirs back recently. Huh. Blocking their camera maybe or something? Anyway, but the candidates that I have come up with are, in terms of vining on the fence, I've got star jasmine, which is not a true jasmine, and one of the morning glories. I think it's the flying saucer. I'm not sure which one it is, but those grow perennial. No. They grow. Actually, one might be a perennial. The other one might be an annual, but they vine. They vine and entwine, and they have this this vining habit that they'll grow on each other and onto structures, right? I had a true jasmine that one of the cats came in here and peed on, so it killed it. But, geez, look at that. That's horrible. That's trash. Just trashing the fucking place, killing the fucking trees, trashing the fucking place. Like, it's more than one person could fucking handle. If they didn't actively set out to bog me down with all this bullshit, I might be able to handle it. Just one person, but it's more than one person can go up against so many fucking people with this bullshit, you know? So, right, the cats peed on that true jasmine, and now I've just got seeds, so I'll have to start them from seed, and I don't know what. I've never grown them from seed before. Morning glories are pretty stubborn; they'll grow pretty easily. That'll be gone though, that lime tree. And I really don't think, in terms of how far those plants can grow, even, that it's enough to cover the span from that corner all the way to that corner. And especially when there's not even any soil down here, all the way back there. Even if we were to open that up to cover this span in between corner to corner, and then go grow up that high. So I thought maybe Italian cypress is a pretty compact grower in terms of leaves, and it would grow kind of like a base about that wide, sometimes wider if they're older. Kind of told they're slow growers, but from there, that doesn't even have a planter. That corner right there could potentially be used, but I don't think it should for that. I'd rather grow my food there. Plus, how much shade it would give to that apple tree, and then there I don't have any plants to plant any other trees, so it wouldn't block anything there. I was thinking grasses, maybe even mint or something, right? But it would have to be from there at furthest that way to about here at furthest this way. So this post right here. And that gives us some area to work with. If you were to put back to back Italian cypress in a different planter, maybe if it was far enough off the ground, like maybe that height, or even halfway up. Doesn't have to be all the way up here, right? Could be, but it doesn't have to be. I think that's overkill. Elevated off the ground, probably draining out into that planter. Then I could see how fully mature, fully grown ones could take up a space, maybe say a little bigger than one of those buckets or one of those drums, those barrels, right? So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, densely planted. 4 is doable. 2 at least. There. And that would do it for that. Over here, since like I was saying, this thing, it needs to get dug up anyway because it's not reinforced. In order to even be able to add, uh, you know, at that height bricks like that one has been, and then like that height has been also, uh, then the foundation needs to get dug up under there, and it needs to get reinforced with more rebar and cement and brick, and then buried back again. And since it's already gotten torn up, I think we should remove as much as we can of this, and that. And like I said, that roof will already be gone. And then only after that's done, um, ideally, because it can get done sloppily, and chain link fence can get put up kind of at that height right there to that corner, but that's sloppy considering it's not reinforced and it's risky. Also, the strongest winds here are east-west Santa Ana winds, and then the predominant winds are from the west. So that's pretty stupid considering, look at the sun, that way is west, and that way is east. And this much open space before it just allows stronger winds to blow through. So it'd be pretty stupid to do it like that, but you could if you wanted to. It's not an absolute risk. You might be able to do it within the window that something would eventually damage it. It would keep the cats off, so no more cleaning cat shit off the fucking roof. As much as I am flattered that they like to have a little sunbathing session here and fight each other here, they shouldn't be allowed through, especially when they have owners, masters that don't deworm them, at least put flea collars on them and give them their shots and shit. So, I mean, come on, the government passes by here all the time with free vaccinations against rabies, and the least they could fucking do is give them a fucking rabies vaccine. So, since that's got to get torn up, I say that's got to get torn up. Not an absolute, but I say that's got to get torn up. I don't think any more house should get built on this again. At least not this part, Back here, maybe long term in the future, potentially. But that's even all the more reason why that wall needs to get reinforced so that we don't ever even need to dig that up again. In extreme cases, maybe, I don't know. But this, I think, should get torn up. And you could put down, bricks, you could put down paving stones, but I don't think it should get paved over like that. Permanent, impermeable surface, because that shit floods. 1 inch and that shit's flooded. It's been really bad with that roof because all the rain right there just puddles up over here. And then it's got one little hole to drain right there, then a really horrible incline leading to the pipe in that direction. So, yeah, I think it would be better if it was a permeable surface. And then in that corner right there, somewhere in this general space somewhere right here, within, like I said, within those 4 points right there, a deciduous tree that would give this rest of the roof shade cover in the summertime, and then lose its leaves and allow sunlight through in the wintertime. Like right now, That's where the sun is right now, right there, right there, and it's already setting. Around 4 or 5 is, you know, there's no more direct sunlight visible here. So that's a great angle right there to be thinking of something like, I think, a mulberry tree. They're fast growers in this climate, deciduous, or a sycamore tree. Also do well in this climate, and they grow pretty big. Uh, I'm impartial to. No, I want to grow oyster mushrooms, and I've heard that sycamore tree wood is good for the oyster mushrooms to grow through. So I'd like to grow sycamore right here. I'd also like to put some sycamores in the park, with the same general, function of blocking summertime heat and direct sunlight and allowing winter sunlight through. So, but that's later. I'll go over that maybe before I end this second part. The first part was like 40 some minutes, almost 45 minutes, I think. So I think maybe if there was a sycamore here and there was a mulberry tree over here, that'd be fine. I think that's workable. Or maybe even kind of tightly spaced just within this space. So like a sycamore closer to the house here, probably like right there. So like if directly planted right down there, right down there. X sycamore. So it's like at least 3 feet away from the house. I think 4 feet is recommended. 4 feet, something like that, a yard. And then the mulberry over towards that corner right there, much closer to that wall. Obviously not having to worry about the trees upheaving the foundations or anything. Because then they'd lose all their leaves and all that sunlight would get through in the winter. But in the summertime, it's plenty of shade cover from that angle. If trained right, they could replace, the mulberry could replace these trees for their function of shade cover, which, they weren't doing before. They weren't this big. They weren't this tall. It's nice, but it's problematic. Really problematic. What else? Okay. So, over here, I've got the seeds for it. I've never started them from seed. Never really even grown them much. I've pruned mesquite, but I'd like to plant a mesquite tree right over there. Right by those buckets, which are for composting the cat's feces from the litter box. I'd like to plant a mesquite tree there, and then another one where that ficus tree is on the other side of that wall. I don't think it's too smart to put a sycamore tree over on this side, because even in the summertime, kind of only getting half the amount of sunlight with so much structure around here like this and the neighbor's house, which before it was that house over there, but now I've got it closer, so the angle is a lot less convenient, a lot less direct sunlight getting through, so I'm not able to grow as much food plants here. Yeah, so another mesquite there, and then I've got drawings for what I'd like to do with the planter there. But in the long term, I think the driveway needs to get made more permeable, this driveway, and then this driveway needs to get phased out to have a driveway in this half. Long term. I don't even have to be the one to do it. I don't even have to own the house to do it. I don't even have to know who owns the fucking house to do it. But it just makes sense design-wise for this place. Ideally, I favor some Earthship biotexture concepts, principles, design stuff. Michael Reynolds posted a video on his YouTube outlining a design for an urban residential block model for, I think he was doing a presentation in China, and they asked him to do one for them, and he came up with one that basically is one U module back. So I forget what the measurements are. It's like 18 feet by 25 feet, something like that. So here I would want to reserve the space back here for about one U module thick. That's the 18, right? Or is it further back than in? Further in than back? No, I think the U modules are wider than, they can be wider than deep to allow the sunlight in. Because this house has a major problem with thermal mass. Right now, it is so fucking cold in there. I'm wearing, I don't know how many fucking layers, right? And it's California. It's the Californias, man. It's Baja. It should be warm. People are used to warm. I didn't grow up in. Anyway, so ideally it should be around 70-something degrees inside, and it's not. It's cold because at nighttime, this whole roof, especially when it rains, is bleeding out heat. Even from this. I mean, especially from this. It's like an open sore. And in the daytime, because of the change in the angle, this wall right here is not collecting any heat. And the heat that does get collected on the surface is hitting at an angle that it can't make the most of it. An angle like that would do better. An angle of about like 30, 40 degrees, this way, in that way, that would capture more, direct sunlight at a perpendicular angle, and it would trap it and reduce energy costs for heating in the winter. So you want to heat it in the winter, and you want to cool it in the summer using the angle of the sun, right? So I would want to reserve, and again, I don't remember the exact measurements of the U modules, but it's pretty predictable. One here, I think from that side, it would reach about here. That's one module. And then from here, another module, about that far here. So that's that line right there. And then from that one to the end of here. I don't think it needs to go further than that, but it could. It could extend probably all the way to where the guava tree is, or that first planter right there, with another module. But the point being that this serves as a foundation right here for the U modules to stack on. So that'd be the first floor of U modules, right? And then obviously that's already gotten phased out, so there's no permanent, housing structure on this part that is an energy drain. I wish I could visualize it for you, how much energy loss that is. The term I recently learned, I took this course with, there's this Brazilian company that did a course in ecological or sustainable architecture, and I took that in like 2021 in January. And I got this little certificate thing, and it's not a hell of a big deal. Not terribly useful. Really, it's not that useful if I'm not an architect, right, or engineer of some sort. Nobody's really gonna give it any. But I took it anyway because I wanted to see what was up with it, and I liked that. It gives some standards from the industry that are obviously not applied to most architecture nowadays. and which definitely overlap and coincide with the standards that Earthship biotexture and other sustainable architecture that I've read about have outlined. So one of those terms that I really liked about it was sick buildings, sick or unhealthy buildings. If this were put through those standards, this would qualify as a sick building. It doesn't seem like there's much wrong with it. You fix up those patches and it's not leaking anymore, and but it's a sick building. Not just because of the windows not being double paned, which some people will complain about. Only rich people can afford dual pane or triple pane windows, 4-pane windows. Only rich people can afford ecological housing. It's not true. It's not true. If anything, reducing the footprint of this house, reducing the size that this house occupies, would increase its efficiency, would increase its energy efficiency and its health, the health value of it, because allowing more direct daylight to affect the functions of the house, especially the people living inside of it, right? How much daylight you get inside affects your circadian rhythms, affects a lot of endocrine hormone functions of the body, esteem, psychology, mood, digestion, things you're not even conscious of. The type of light, the frequency and the duration and the time of light. There's standards for that, and I really liked that that course highlighted that too. So you need to have some level of direct and indirect light within proportion. It doesn't have to be. It's not like a robotic thing, but there are standards. It does have. There are some rules to it, and this house currently does not comply by what those standards would be for it to be called anything but a sick house right now. It's a sick building. It's like if part of your leg was tied off with a tourniquet. Tourniquets, I mean, unless you're already gonna lose the limb, this should probably never be used. Some rare cases, right? But a tourniquet, unless you're gonna lose the limb, should not be used. And I'm saying, well, we need to lose this right here, all this whole half, and that part back there, and some of the cement, because it's like carrying around a dead vestigial limb. It can't be kept on because it's still consuming resources. The house is still lugging its weight around year after year after year through every season. The energy bill is still lugging this part of the house around. The daylight is still getting blocked and misused in the summertime. This heats up a lot and it doesn't vent properly. The wind isn't used properly. There's no sump for the cold air to sink into, to bleed out of the house, to allow for efficiency in the winter if it gets heated. So since the slab of the house, the concrete, the foundation, it remains cold, any heating of the house not only soaks in and gets sucked up like a vampire, dead limb or something, bleeding out into the walls, it also gets sucked into the floor. Parking instructor. So, right, over time, even this space right here would be clear to walk through, and the slab there can stay. Once it's open air, that slab can serve as a sort of patio. You cover it with like I said, that sort of that sort right there, that sort of roof, and it could be slatted. It could be not. It could just be a shade structure. Allows indirect light, allows air to flow completely through it, less wind resistance that way. But then a different roof would have to get built under here that keeps the rain off. And it's easier to keep off if it's not too far off from these, not too high up. And there's a limit on how far out that can get built. And that's why I think this needs to get removed, because that means we have less to cover over here in terms of a drip line with gutters and that sort of thing. Not that it gets too wet, but it does, and it shouldn't. So this would be open eventually, and then this would get converted into the semi-permanent functional part of the house. All this, right? From there over. That can be one of the last parts to get started on in the next set of phases, but that's the general idea. In here, since that's already damaged, it needs to get removed. I think instead of rebuilding it there, it should get rebuilt generally there. Obviously, the macadamia tree is damaged by termites. I need to cut it down almost to the stump. What they did inadvertently, I don't know if they thought they were going to kill it, but trees have their tricks, and they obey rules too. It came back with a little help for me, and hopefully we'll get it growing again. I know that one's damaged by termites too. It also has termites, but I hope we can get it to grow a structure that isn't. Anyway, so closer to that tree right there, put a one of these rebar. I don't know. They call them castillos in Spanish. Rebar there, and then have the door, basically like kind of a wall here. Have the door face. You see the way the 90-degree angle it is at generally, relative to where the door frame is, over about a door length or two, so that it lines up with another column right there, another rebar and concrete column. So 2 new rebar columns right there, and then generally at that level another door, or that door, but that's walled off now. And then as for that gate right there, do something about changing its placement so that it doesn't need that one. I think another gate right there would be fine. That level is fine because we only need one car to fit in here, and once that tree's gone, one whole car does line up, does extend, does reach over here. Then over time, the new doorway, the entryway, when that's no longer the kitchen and has no longer been the bathroom, will be the doorway into the house here. And this door can get phased out, replaced with, I don't know, some sort of glass bricks or something kind of removable. But that sliding glass door remains for the time being. So there's an entryway there, and then there's an entryway there, over there. So that doesn't need to get used here. So the car can actually roll up all the way here, and one car length right there is about 1.5 there can fit. I think 2 could still fit if we retain some capacity to extend a door to close there. So it'd be new door there, the planter out there on that side, and then new line for the usual gate to be there, since I don't have a car currently, and even if I did, I'd only have probably one, or something lighter like a motorcycle or a motorbike or something, right? So this weather is fucking up my knee, man. I feel wobbly. So then the new gate, or that same old gate refurbished, would open and close right about there. I think it would make sense for at that level or close to that level, since we've got a little leeway, less than a foot out. Could be further out or could be further in, but generally at that level, something shorter and or something like bars. You can see some other houses have barred gates, and then some of the houses have partially barred, partially, like half and half. See that over there. Oh, I think it's hilarious how I outlined and I even described to my parents and a few other people the process of changing this house's roof and building up on top of it. And not even within a year of the last time that I reminded them, they, guess who over here basically ripped me off. I think that's funny. I think that's hilarious. They like taking ideas and then doing them worse. Check out that mulberry tree. We're at right there, right in the center. That's a great spot. That's a great spot. Why was it not good enough where I planted one myself? Why did you have to kill that one? Oh, because you don't feel like you own it? Huh. I thought you owned everything. Right, guys. So then eventually, like I said, even after that's made into a semi-permeable driveway, I don't know if strips or bricks or something, or even a metal grate with gravel, that would get phased out. That would be the new driveway, so even the planter that's there would get removed. And then a car would be able to use this space as driveway. Long term, the whole bottom floor that's currently, lived in and shares this half of the house, or this half of the property as house, would get opened up. Could be a garage and a laundry room or utility room for batteries, for a cistern. A cistern could be buried under there or under somewhere along this wall here. But since the new driveway would be more in accordance with the slope of the street there, it could be sunk in a bit more, just a little bit, not too much. Don't want to have a welling of cold air. I want the cold air to be able to bleed off the property in the winter. Also, when it rains, if there is overflow, I want it to be able to bleed out. And in this half, I'd like generally native themed plants, drought tolerant, native themed plants, indigenous species, with sort of like a mound there, higher up, raise the elevation of the soil level here at least to, if it were to be down there, I'm about 6 feet 2 inches tall, whatever, right? Generally waist height for me, around there, if not higher, because that would reinforce this wall, and it would also reduce the amount of space that's kind of not being used for plant or house. It's kind of an energy sucker. And since there's no house being built over there, it would slope away from there to direct whatever rainwater collected on that side in this way. This would be the zone 1. This would be zone 1-ish, This whole front part could be used for, patio and pots, planters, raised beds, maybe even. And then this is less zone 1 that it needs to be soon. So this is going to start to be, but in the long term, it shouldn't be. And then once the cars are able to drive through right there, if you look up that residential block plan from Michael Reynolds, his design has a parking structure right next to the first U module house, the first floor. So the ground floor has so the residential module includes a line of, so if it were at this level, right, that we are on the roof, this would be the U modules. This would be the house, and the windows would be opened this way. Again, east, west, but then, assuming that's the ground level, right? And then behind that is not a wall of soil. It's not that earth berm with the buried cistern. Instead, it's a parking structure. Okay, and then the parking structure on the sides has columns with, stairs to climb on foot up and down between parking structure levels, right? Or to the house levels. But behind that would be a parking structure. So, like example, this house would be kind of taking up the space. That would be the parking structure. Obviously, this is downhill. It's not the smartest to be designing earthship type things against the natural slope of the land. It's more for like a flat area if you're gonna build. And then ideally, if this was getting developed that way, this whole side of the mountain doesn't really accommodate it. It'd be more to the south, since you can tell the sunlight still favors the south side there. But since we're not working with that, I thought, well, kind of like as if we put in like a space holder, pretend that there's already U modules here, right there. So that would allow us to visualize that there's a parking structure under this part that could be used for U modules. That means that this part can get U modules built generally, more or less, at this level. And then after that, there's a lot of improvising the column structures and support for how anything above that first line of U modules could get built up on, because vertical construction really is a necessity in urban spaces like this with such small footprints. So I have tossed some ideas around. Steel beams and columns. I've looked at Buckminster Fuller's work. I've looked at Super Adobe from Nader Khalili. I don't know. I've tossed some ideas around. I like the idea of steel frame, but it's not the most ecological unless it's designed in a way that can get taken apart easily or can be recycled easy. The energy footprint of that is just probably soon going to be cost prohibitive. Right now, the prices are skewed. People can get cheap shit that shouldn't be cheap because the prices are adjusted kind of unrealistically. You shouldn't be able to afford a burger in this climate awareness phase. Jeez, dogs. Jesus Christ. Just shit. So again, approaching more long-term or permanent. less fluctuation. That would be a parking structure right under there. Up until that space right there, which doesn't have any construction right now, right? But I think longer term, it could have a sort of construction. And if it did, it either could serve another U module, which I think it should, but it could also serve like a stairwell, like the residential block Earthship model thing that he did for China had. If it's not on that side, then it has to be on this side. And if it's on this side, there's a little bit of an issue because that's already being used to bring a car through, right? So, and you want it to be accessible from within the property. It can be accessible from without, but it can't be cut off from within the property. Not a bad idea to have something like a column right up against the sidewalk. It doesn't sound like a bad idea. But yeah, I don't know. Good day at the slots, motherfuckers. Anyway, so and then for the facade, the face, the front here, I've got a drawing lined up for that to allow kind of like a slope inward, like that inward. Oh wait, no. For that part, it's actually like that because I want the leaves that collect on it to blow inward. So I'd like to hang some grapevines. All right, I'm gonna get down off the roof. It's starting to get a little windy. Okay. So not necessarily in terms of time, but in terms of development of the footprint, the square footage of the actual house. I would call it the halfway point when there's a planter outside, where I remember somebody killed a black cat and dumped him out in my cactus patch that week while I was outlining that line right there for a runoff planter. And I only was able to get that chunk out right there, and you can already tell it's growing grass on it that I seeded from that species over there next to the ficus tree. And I have some more seeds over here. That's this grass right there. That's that species. So the halfway point would be when that planter is more developed, because right now this is getting water damaged because the see that right there? There's like scouring and everything right there. That's the same species right there too. It's a perennial. It's really, I don't know how deep the roots are, but it grows really well. So around that level, a lot of water damage. This is flaking off, basically, right there. And I'd like a planter here that's at least that height and able to capture that rainwater before it gets to the street, because that's a problem right there. I don't want to contribute that right there. And we do that not just off of these two here, down this corner, but also off this way. There's like humidity marks right there right now. So you can tell where they bang that with the car. Well, since that's gonna go, I figured seize the opportunity to move this door. You can't really, I guess there's not much you can do. Even if I put it at my eye level, the lens doesn't capture it as well as the eyes do at the same perspective. I'd have to like put this thing in my head or some shit on. Anyway, so this door would be right over here. This would open up right here instead of over there. So when you walk up to the house, this would be a wall right here, from here to here. That would be a wall. And then from here to here would be a gate much like that. Could even be that same metal, fixed up and moved in. I'd like thicker, something stronger. I mean, look, they like driving cars in through my gate, right? Something that would at least break their drive shaft or something. If not, have some spikes at the bottom for their tires. What are they going to do? Bring a tank through? So extend about that level to there, right? With a gate like that. And then somewhere around here to there, which I said could be out a little further, not much, but like less than 12 inches right there, out that way. Something shorter, or it could even be same height, but less permanent. I don't know, less. How do I even say it? Much less impermeable, much less visual barrier like. So it could be chain link, it could be bars, it could be half height, it could be mixed, metallic, solid, and then other half bars like those other fences, gate things over there. Basically, so that they can be opened and closed separately. So that when this one's closed off, you can't really walk through here, right? You can't really, a cat, a dog, they can't really get through here. It has to be through this door in through here. But then, since this is new, there's going to be a new front step, so to speak. It's the front step. This space right here can have something like a small little fenced gate or something. Can even be walled off this height with some bars here, right? So that this could get opened up and still keep that one closed, which would allow more air to pass through. Or, if... and then the difference would be that there would be more driveway space. That's the big main difference. It's not the main purpose and intention. But the functional purpose would be that it would allow enough space just within this line and this half that is currently being used as a driveway to now not just fit one car but fit two. And that small space right there, it makes the difference that at least up until here, it allows two moderate sized cars to fit bumper to bumper. And removing this, that no longer is necessary, but it does kind of help, is so that they're not bumper to bumper. The other car, the first car, can go up until here, and it doesn't have to be a small to moderate car. It could be a larger car, and allows enough space for a small to a moderate car to fit right behind it. And that's why it would be two. But since that's not always the situation, it's not always necessary, the less permeable one would be over here. I've looked at, designs of like garage doors, those flimsy little fiberglass or aluminum ones, and I don't know, man. I've had people drive their fucking cars through my fucking front gate. Does that happen with those fucking gates? Because I don't think they would hold up. So I'd like something more sturdy. But also, this isn't a fucking military bunker, I don't want something like that aesthetic right there. So then, once that opens up there, that becomes a new entryway, and it doesn't look so bad, does it? This could let better airflow through, because right now, once I close that up, there's like a tiny little sliver under the door that the air is allowed to flow through. Summer and winter, there's a circulation issue with the hot and cold air. So it doesn't look so bad for now. So again, back to this. This is pretty long. I guess I haven't updated, making up for lost time. For the time being, this has to be a zone 1-ish. Most of my food has to come out of the space closest to the house. Ideally, I need open soil, not just pots. But I've got some pots that I can get some soil in. The soil quality here is not that good. A lot of it's contaminated, if not laden with broken glass and other debris that I don't want. This, again, would get repurposed. The smaller space, the better in the short term, the first half of the development. Then, over time, the cars would be able to drive up into there, covered with that, and some security doors. If those security doors can be the ones that will get placed here, just repurposed for the ones over here, the space over here, then so be it. But that would mean that up until that small space in the back, this space here doesn't get lived in. At least 2/3 of it doesn't get lived in. It's all driveway space, garage, storage, laundry room, maybe a small bath, but no room, no bedroom, living room, kitchen, any of that. And then the back corner, the northwestern part, that corner gets used as a column for a set of steps or that sort of thing, with basically a lot of solid foundation. And then for there to be a U module up there, since that's a really heavy structure, and it has to be earthquake resistant, better than the standards of these types of houses around me, and better than masonry structures, right? We need standards like the Super Adobe and the Earthship standards for earthquake resistance. So this has to be a steel column. It has to be a steel frame. And that's not that cheap. It's not absolutely cost prohibitive, even if it looks like it. And I get how some people are like, they would rather think of aesthetics when it comes to doing these sort of things, but I really think the function, trumps the aesthetics. And on top of the first floor of U modules, which is already basically second story if you're looking at it from this ground level, right, from the street level. So that's already 2 stories, one for the cars, one for the first set of U modules. That's a pretty modest house. 2, 3 U modules at least, right? But I would like to add to that on top of that so that it's not just above that level right there. It can be higher. And you can play around with the types of architecture a little bit to some degree. They're not like absolutes, but also you can't just be about aesthetics. You have to keep the function in mind. And I think if a type of I haven't come up with the designs. I haven't come up with because most of the work is already done with the U modules, right? But if I was to hybridize the type of structure that Bucky Fuller came up for his Dimaxine design house for urban settings, the vertical space was taken advantage of by a tall central column, right? So it takes up very little space on the bottom, but it takes up the most efficient use of space vertically. Because from the center column, oh my god, geez, fucking capitalism, man. Pause for the ad. Right. I thought I got ad block. Anyway. So, right. If that were to be the approach, I don't know how much of the structure would require anchoring to the main steel structure, because a union can't be welded, right? And it's different types of metals. I think the Dimaxine, Jesus fuck shit. Nobody paid attention to the park before. Once a fucking week, a group would pass through. Why does it seem like nobody from other neighborhoods feels comfortable enough to go past the little clique that's decided it's all theirs? Not mine, all theirs. It's a big town. It's a big town. There's not a hell of a lot of parks. Why just theirs? Doesn't seem fair, does it? And nobody of theirs is in fear of getting their legs broken, huh? Also, nobody of theirs is picking up the garbage. You'd probably have to pay them. Or they'd pay somebody else. They'd just give the money to somebody else. Take half, pay somebody else. Thanks for the money. Sure, I'll clean it. And they give somebody else the money to do it for them. That's the spirit. That's their spirit. So, if a central column could be put in for the remaining floors on top of the first U module, which again is above this level, so above that, then could it I don't think it's safe enough to anchor it to even to adjacent tire walls. Those types of tire walls. I mean, look at that. That doesn't seem like enough. I don't think it might be enough. Like if there's four right there, right next to each other, then to anchor a post through there, and then the material. The material used for the Demaxon houses originally was intended to be efficient for mass production. If you wanted to do something like that individually, that becomes a lot more prohibitive. The intention was to take advantage of factories, mass production factories, at the end of the war, so that they wouldn't be used for producing weaponry. Well, the war machine, the military industrial complex decided we're still going to use them for weapons, and we're going to make other excuses for more wars, domestic, official or unofficial, or abroad, official or unofficial. And so those machines are not free to be able to produce cost effective, efficient housing. So the design would be really cut into. It would be really a lot less of its full potential. And that's unfortunate. But it still has its engineering advantages. And one of those advantages is that the footprint is reduced on the, how much area it takes up. And it's increased on how much area it makes up for in terms of vertical space. So whatever area you're consuming on the first floor of it, you could consume multiple times depending on the size of the central column that the floors are suspended on. That's the thing, it's suspension. So, the material and the precision really, really is important. Which makes it earthquake resistance because it just wobbles with the earthquake. Winds just wobble it around at worst, but they don't tear the structure apart. But it really does need a high level of precision and reliability. You can't be having those metals corrode or deteriorate over time. Should I be pointing this camera at myself? I didn't even think. I was just thinking of recording the audio. Can I flip how do you flip the camera on this while it's playing? I don't think you can. Nope, you can't. Oh well, I don't feel like being on camera right now anyway. So, and I haven't done the math on how many floors you could sustain on, what span of column, whether it could be steel or whether it can be aluminum. I believe the original structure used aluminum for the house, and I'm not sure about the column itself being aluminum. I think it might have been a circular, like, tube column with steel, steel suspension chain. I don't know, cable, steel suspension cable, like they do for bridges. So the suspension. So the column, runs. How do I? Okay, so pretend this is the column, right? And off of that column is cables, right? So the cables hang off the column, and they rely on the strength of the column, and they rely on the tension strength of the cable. The structure wobbles. It doesn't damage the structure, and the floors in between are like discs suspended on. Oh, great! Another ad. Right. So the floors would form rings around, and the main structure of those floors would be tethered by suspension cables to the central column. The central column can be used to support also a central sort of like staircase to it. Um, it is much more efficient than having columns all along the sides and having a frame, basically like little boxes stacked on top of each other, like that. Um, because, well, the efficiency of the materials. You're using the strengths of each particular material, but I mean, this can't just be abandoned. You like long term, an Earth ship, if it goes abandoned, could easily be reclaimed, could easily be patched up and fixed. Whereas this, if the cables were corroded, the central structure were uh, rusted or corroded, the metals might begin to buckle, and you wouldn't be able to reclaim any of it. If anything, the structure would pancake down on itself from the weak points down. Um, it's a very industrial era type vision and design, and you'd have to be confident that you could maintain it and upkeep it, and take care of it over the long term. Whoever did that um, would have to know how and why it was built. And if you look around, that isn't necessarily the type of mentality people have around here. All sorts of cut corners and, well, whatnot. But potentially, I mean, you could add maybe 2, 3 extra floors on top of that, which would mean one bottom floor, one U module floor, and then 2, 3 floors on top of that per column. Per column. So if you had, like I said, I don't know if it needs to connect to the frame, the metal frame that's upholding the first set of U modules, or if it's just anchored to the rammed earth tire walls. Um, buried maybe a few tires deep, but into the walls. So that would mean between each rammed earth tire wall, or yeah, there'd be one post. If you just had one, it could have, let's see, one there, and then two, at least two spots it could anchor to, or three or four. So however many U modules are up on that floor, minus the outside uh, walls, basically only the points where there's tires, two tire walls next to each other. And those are the only ones that would be strong enough to hold something like that, something heavy and, you know, producing all that stress, the strain on them. That it would need to get absorbed, which is why I don't know if it would be better to anchor them to the steel frame, if they would be made out of steel, or if they'd be aluminum. I think as far as compression strength, steel is stronger. I'm not sure. Aluminum might be stronger and lighter. But that's, because it would be thicker. Because once it's thin, I mean, you've seen aluminum cans crush. I'm not sure. There's charts on that. I could refer to. I don't have that in my head right now. I'm not you know, an engineer, chemical engineer. But yeah, kind of looking forward to it. Because in this space, this would be the doorway into the house, right there. It's into the house right there. You know, and then this would even get phased out. This would no longer be a room. There'd be a big old tree here. A couple of big old trees. Might still have a door over to that side of the house. But this would be the front step. A little elevated off the ground around that level. And then this would be closed off. I don't know if you've seen those translucent glass blocks, but around this height, it'd be nice to have some glass blocks. Maybe could have bricks there or something. I don't know, some sort of planter. That would still be there. But yeah, that's those are the design concepts for the for this urban setting. I'm gonna go inside and I'll bring out some of the drawings, which I'll just go inside. All right, so this is top-down view, kind of halfway point, and then later I'll develop more of a drawing SketchUp from what I've said I'd like to convert it to. And you know, this is generally, you know, this window's a little off proportion. It's a bigger window and it's further, well, that way. But kind of outlining there what I'd like to build on. And then this is a concept of what the front should look like. I tried to include some of the planting for the landscape stuff. You see some agave, mesquite, the main thing, some opuntia, aloe, maybe a San Pedro back there. Didn't really fit it in because it looks too cluttery. You might see some of the grapevine along there, some bougainvillea, and then the two gate concept there. That's a more up to the front idea, and that's a very, very basic railing gate idea, but it sets up the concept, right? And then out of sight, out of the scope of this drawing, you can kind of see where the door would be to the front, but it's not there, and there is no door visible from this angle to the house. You can kind of see that the driveway has space down the middle that's not impermeable, and I don't know what I would do to change the part where the tire treads would need to roll over. I figure some bars would work there. Like I said, the angle would slope inward, not outward, to reduce the amount of leaves that fall into the street and out of the property. Let's clean up that way. Easier to clean up, less stuff getting blown into neighbors, less complaints, that sort of thing. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd like that to be stone. Not just the face, but actual stone into the ground, because it lasts long, it's more permanent. Some steps here, kind of sort of wheelchair access along this way if need be, but stone here. And on the inside, there's something to redirect the runoff to this planter. If not in there, absorbed in there, into this planter, so that the last leg of the runoff is soaked into here, and whatever excess flows out through here, sidewalk level. And like I said, eventually, longer term, more permanently, this would get opened up, sort of. There'd be some native wildlife planted there, sycamore, sage shrub, that sort of thing. What goes with the grasslands here. And then this would be the driveway entrance. So this mesquite would eventually get cut down, but by then, hopefully, it would provide a lot of firewood if it had been tended to and taken care of in the meantime. And that agave would probably get harvested for, hopefully, tequila or mezcal, something, right? So yeah, so that's the general idea. But in the meantime, I think that should be strong enough to hold that all that soil saturated with rainwater and barely let any out onto the street. Even if you were to wash your car here, all the runoff should be going into that planter. Yeah, basically.